the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Years, Tennessee 26 years, and Nebraska 27 if you go with a split national title, or 29 if you go with their last outright national title. So I think it's obvious in that group, like no one's picking Nebraska. Like we don't know if Nebraska will ever win another.
They got geography. The problem in Nebraska is they got geography. That's just it just what it is. What it is. They got geography. They can't win a title with their geography.
If Bill Self can get basketball players to come to Lawrence, Kansas, why can't Matt Rule get football players to come?
Well, because you only need 5 of those
Nebraska
guys. Significantly less amount of bodies to Kansas. It requires a whole heck of a lot more players to Lawrence, Kansas to be
Spokane, Washington. They can get some big time recruits as well.
Well, that's
But obviously, same argument. It's easier to build a basketball program, maybe. But so USC at 20 years, like they don't feel that close, other than the fact that they're just USC, and you're like, hey, they can get 5-star talent, and they have Lincoln Riley, they have a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. But like with that Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, like how close did they really get to a college football playoff? Like even if they win the Pac-12 in 2022, do they get to the college football playoff, or are they still on the outside looking in? Like they were like a 2-loss team that year, right? Or maybe I'm misremembering it. Maybe that was their second loss. But USC hasn't really gotten that close. And I mean, I guess you're with Lincoln Riley, is that a generational quarterback, or is that just what you're going to have every year because you basically have a Heisman quarterback more times than not under Lincoln Riley? So I don't know. USC doesn't feel that close to me.
I think they're close. I think they're always gonna be close when you have a Heisman quarterback. Like that's just part of the deal. Like when you have the best quarterback in the country, you're gonna be technically close. There was people who were talking about Lincoln Riley and USC making the CFP last year before the season. So they have the talent.
We're gonna talk about it every year, but does that mean you're close?
I think the is it Deanton Lynn? Is that the pronunciation? Is it Deanton Lynn, who was the DC from UCLA coming over? I want to say it's Deanton Lynn.
Not sure.
Yes, Deanton. He's an elite defensive mind, and he's only 34. Was doing wonders with that UCLA defense. Like that was something overlooked with Chip Kelly at UCLA. Was that defense was stingy and was really, really good. One of the nation's best this past year. I think he's getting serious, Lincoln Riley, about the defense. And they obviously have been hot in the recruiting trail the last couple of weeks. I think the defensive turnaround is coming in Trojan land. So for me, I'm not worried about Lincoln Riley figuring out the offense. I'm not worried about Lincoln Riley putting up points. They're going to continue to have Heisman quarterbacks. Like that's just, I'm not going to move away from that. I don't know who the next man is going to be for USC, but I'm not betting against Lincoln Riley in that regard. The biggest caveat to them not reaching their full potential in Southern California of late was that the defense was never even close to being good enough to win a national title with Lincoln Riley to this point. I think if you can get Deanton Lynn to be there for a couple of years and they can really build this defense out and they keep winning some big battles in the recruiting trail, like Cam Fountain from Georgia, he's a really good player. They brought in obviously defensive tackle transfer last offseason from Georgia. What was his name? I'm already blanking.
Bear Alexander.
Like you just need more of those guys. Like you need to be expansive. You need to go into Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Texas, whatever, win some of those battles with some of those guys. And I think that the path is there. I would not be surprised if Lincoln Riley and USC won a title in the next 5 years.
And I got to fact check myself here. They have been close because they were ranked number 4 going into the Pac-12 championship in 2022 before getting blasted by Utah. But if you get blasted by Utah, are you really close?
Yes, they're close because some teams are just bad matchups. Like some teams are just bad matchups for you. Like for whatever reason, South Carolina will always be a bad matchup for Georgia in football. Not for anybody else. Like Tennessee's never had it. Historically, Tennessee has never had an unfortunate situation with a South Carolina football game. Like especially not in the last 3 years.
I think you're remembering the Steve Spurrier era because most ever since Spurrier left, Georgia pretty much blasted South Carolina almost every year. What?
Y'all were in a dogfight last year. I remember at halftime.
Last year was a pretty close game.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously the 2019, the upset. South Carolina beat Georgia. But you look at most years, it's a beatdown. Like 2022 at South Carolina, what was it, like 48-3 or something?
Yeah.
There's been some lopsided ones too. Missouri, I'll say Missouri has given Georgia a couple close games in recent years.
I will say though, of that group, I think USC is probably the closest. Tennessee's probably the second, I would say, among that group. I don't know if you would disagree on that front, but I would say Tennessee is number 2.
See, I think if you're just going current trajectory, Tennessee feels like the second closest right now. But like with what Oklahoma just is, like, I mean, this is a team. Obviously, Lincoln Riley was the head coach, so and Bob Stoops for at least one. They made multiple playoff appearances, like even under and going further back in the Bob Stoops era, like at least like 4 or 5 national championship game appearances. And they won the one, but they're going on 24 years of winning a national championship.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.